I actually played the first Psychonauts game back in high school, but I stopped playing after a few hours. I just wasn't in the right headspace at the time because of my personal life, and Psychonauts is a game that is all about delving into people's minds and dealing with things like that, artistically of course, and with plenty of humor. Like, there's literally a bunch of collectibles called emotional baggage in Psychonauts' mental worlds. Sorting through them is as simple as finding a matching tag, but sadly, it wasn't that simple in real life. I ended up dropping the game because I had to sort through my own emotional baggage first. It seems silly when I think back on it now, especially since Psychonauts is such a cartoony game, but it definitely felt much worse at the time. Things are better now though, which made me really appreciate how Psychonauts 2 handles its themes of empathy and healing from trauma. So if you haven't played the previous two games, this one's got you covered. There's a cute recap that tells you all you need to know before you can start playing. It can be a little overwhelming if you don't know anything about Psychonauts, but I think it sinks in after a while. Anyway, Psychonauts 2 begins right after the events of the VR game, Rhombus of the Rune. It tells the story of Rasputin Aquato, a young psychic who just fulfilled his dream of joining an international psychic organization known as the Psychonauts. Or at least he thought he did. He arrives at their headquarters, the Motherlobe, only to find out that he's just an intern, not an actual agent. And so he begins his training while dealing with the other interns who aren't so welcoming. Meanwhile, a mole has been spotted in the organization, so things start escalating, giving Raz the motive to explore people's brains. I actually had the same thought running through my head while I was completing missions and goofing off as Raz. How is this game real? Now, I love hyper-realistic modern blockbuster games as much as the next person. It's just, if you play a lot of them, then you kinda know what to expect. So when I started playing Psychonauts 2, it instantly stood out from other big-budget titles that were recently released. This game's just so full of creativity. I was mesmerized each time I entered someone's mind, and even the normal places in the game were fun to explore. Like the Motherlobe alone was such an amazing hub area. It felt lively because of all the Psychonauts doing their own thing. I didn't want to miss out on anything, so I spent a lot of time just rolling around with Raz's levitation ability, talking to different NPCs, and collecting hidden Psytanium, which is the game's currency. I thought that the whole game would take place in that one area, but I was so wrong. After completing a couple of missions, things really opened up. The Motherlobe was surrounded by a few more places than I expected, and getting to them was a blast because of how fun platforming is in this game, and exploration was rewarding because of all the collectibles. But my favorite thing to do was exhausting all the optional dialogue with side characters. They're well written and hilarious. They're such a unique cast too, from the agents and interns to Raz's family that's full of circus performers. What made them all stand out is their wildly different personalities, and this is further explored in the heads of characters that Raz needs to investigate. Psychonauts is a game that is all about helping people fight their inner demons, and what better way to do that than to literally dive into people's brains? Everyone's minds are shaped by their lives and mental states, so none of the brains in Psychonauts look the same. This makes them really fun to explore because they're filled with so much creativity. Like, I absolutely love the levels in this game. There were so many moments where I was just admiring how imaginative everything was. I wish I could articulate it more, but I'll just show off the level design in my gameplay footage. It's very rewarding to stop and look around in each brain, because every object can symbolize things that tell you more about the character, and even the figment drawings that you collect blends in with the level's themes. The lighthearted and empathetic nature of the game makes it easier to process the darker stuff though. Underneath all the jokes and colorful visuals lies an artistic representation of issues such as trauma, alcoholism, and addiction. The game treats these subjects with so much respect and compassion that it felt soothing to watch characters grow from it all. So yeah, every mental level in the game is rich in environmental storytelling, and that includes the enemies in them. different enemies will appear while you're platforming through the levels. What I loved about them is they're not just there to get in your way, they help with telling the story. Each enemy embodies thoughts that practically everyone has in their head. It was fun to see how they were inserted in every scenario, because the character designs were seriously spot on. Like sensors are the most common ones. They exist to stamp out thoughts that don't belong in someone's mind. And then there are enemies like regrets. These things look like flying bugs carrying weights that weigh them down. I loved how enemies' attacks lived up to their names too. Like sensors will try to stamp you, while regrets try to drop their weight on you. One of my favorite enemy types was the panic attack, particularly during the first fight with it. As soon as I got thrown into the arena, I thought, wow, this looks exactly like what a panic attack feels like. The fight was one big sensory overload, with the colors and massive eyeballs, and the panic attack creature is a fast enemy type that lives up to its name. It teleports around and launches attacks at Raz. I loved how the best way to beat it was to slow it down using the time bubble ability. This is just one example of an enemy with a specific weakness. The rest are discovered when you progress through the game. Which brings me to Psychonauts 2's various psychic powers. These abilities are unlocked throughout the game, and they're used to solve puzzles and defeat enemies. Powers like telekinesis lets you lift objects, Psyblast lets you fire energy beams, and mental connection can get you to different platforms. One power that I like to mess around with was clairvoyance. It lets you see through the eyes of other people, and what's interesting about it is that when it's used on NPCs, it reveals that everyone views Raz in a different way. The most unique perspectives are from the major characters in the game, but I thought that the background NPCs are worth mentioning too. Some see him as a full-fledged agent, while others see him as a kid playing around. My favorite was how the janitors saw him. I couldn't tell if they viewed him as a hobo or some wild kid covered in mud. Oh, and I also like that one guy who's obsessed with bacon. All he sees is floating bacon when you use clairvoyance on him. But yeah, it's crazy how much detail went into an optional mechanic like this. So all of Raz's powers can be upgraded using intern credits. Increasing intern credits can be done in a number of ways, from doing story missions to collecting figments and cards scattered around different levels. There are also a ton of pins that you can equip to give Raz cosmetic changes and buffs, and they're purchased using Psytanium in Automatic, the game's item shop. The pins are cool and all, but my main problem with the system is that you can only equip 3 of them at the time, so I ended up sacrificing cosmetic pins for more useful ones. It would have been great if you could buy an upgrade or something to carry more of them. Overall, I finished my playthrough at around 25 hours. I spent a lot of time just collecting stuff and doing side missions. I had very few issues with the game, like I think my biggest one was switching through psychic abilities. You can only equip 4 at a time, which doesn't seem all that bad until you need to defeat multiple enemies with different weaknesses. It was a bit annoying having to swap out abilities in the middle of a fight. Oh, and the boss battles felt kinda dated. Like, you'll know what I mean if you've played any old school platformer. There's a very specific way to beat each boss, so it's very scripted. Like, you need to dodge attacks and wait for some kind of opening to appear. Hit the boss like 3 times, watch a cutscene, then rinse and repeat until all their HP is gone. Character animations were also kind of stiff at times, but the voice acting was great, so I got used to it after a while. What mattered to me was I had so much fun playing most of the game. It made me smile and laugh so many times, and I even let out a few happy tears during heartwarming moments. I genuinely think that Psychonauts 2 is one of the best examples of a modern platformer. I highly recommend it. Let me know what you thought about the video. I actually have an announcement to make soon, so I hope you all look forward to that. And, well, that's all I can say, at least until the next video releases. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.